What do you do when you've just tanked your hit franchise by turning an R-rated movie world made for adults into a wacky kids flick? Who, by the way, were already into it as it was.
I think it's going rather well, don't you, sir?
Well, obviously, you're going to take the same franchise and turn it into a TV show also intended for family audiences. Then you're going to air it at night when kids are not watching.
There's a new guy in town. His name's RoboCop.
If you've ever wondered what RoboCop would look like as a TV show that kept the aesthetics and even some of the satire, but replaced the interior with more of a Power Rangers vibe, well, we've got over 16 hours of it to talk about, and every one of them is available on Tubi right now. So here's the story of how they got there.
This is your final warning. Disperse.
After the aforementioned unfortunate situation that was RoboCop 3, amongst other poor investments, Orion Pictures were in dire financial straits. This required them to go after a quick influx of cash that included selling the TV rights to RoboCop. The rights were sold to Canadian company Skyvision Entertainment in May of 1993. Their plans involved taking popular movie IP and expanding it into TV movies and shows. They would later do the same with Universal Soldier, creating a pair of hauntingly atrocious television films starring Gary Busey and Burt Reynolds. Ugh. Skyvision handed Orion Pictures $500,000 for the rights and went on to create 22 40-minute episodes and a pilot over an hour and a half long. The pilot, titled The Future of Law Enforcement, had a budget of $5 million, while each following episode carried a price tag of an average of around $1.2 million each. Each of these episodes would take an average of 8 days to film in Toronto and Ontario, where they recreated the streets of old Detroit and the OCP headquarters. The result is a very awkward yet intriguing situation to take in. For insight into the studio's headspace, look no further than executive producer Stephen Downing. Downing had previously produced the very successful MacGyver television show and saw RoboCop as the same kind of character, which I mean, he's not at all, but it worked for the studio, who wanted a product that they could air on television, but not just any television, family television, not late night HBO or even Skinamax. They were going to have to tone it down one way or another. So, where MacGyver would use his wit to escape a tough situation, RoboCop would have to use his to do the same, without killing anyone, ever. Rather than shooting gigantic holes in bad guys with the hilariously large and awesome gun that lives in his leg, he now used the gun for things other than mere bullets. It now had various settings that would fire things like tracing equipment, explodable hockey pucks, and inflatables to either trap bad guys in their environments or stop them from escaping through a doorway. He'd still fire bullets from time to time, but only at other weapons or inanimate objects. It's mostly just as silly as it sounds, but the show's budget did provide for some pretty sweet action moments regardless. Multiple sequences throughout feature impressive car chases, explosions, and special effects. Sure, the computer effects are hilariously outdated today, but the old school action technique rings true. The dialogue was often silly or corny, especially when it came to the Batman Forever-like villains. But still, when it came to the looks, sounds, and feel of the RoboCop world Verhoeven and company had created, the production understood the assignment in more ways than perhaps given credit for. One thing that is very nice about the show is that they managed to keep a surprising amount of Verhoeven's aesthetics, such as his vision dashboard and the analog lines through it, or the way the mechanics of it worked. It also featured some futuristic upgrades, such as a built-in lie detector that lets him know if someone is on the up and up based on the stress levels in their voice. Each episode would start out with the newscasters promising us that, "You give us 3 minutes, we give you the world," followed by some, at times, pretty funny satirical content that would often tie into that night's episode. It's far tamer than the R-rated versions it's born of, but it's still somewhat endearing. It's as if you were to play a kid's version of Grand Theft Auto Vice City, scrubbed of any unpleasantries. That's not exactly what you want, but it provides some interesting nostalgia. That's not to say that the show was only geared towards children. There are some adult themes at play here under the surface. Storylines about cultist church groups, corporate greed, and more. In the pilot episode, a couple of corporate douchebags meet up to sexercise, an act in which they simply work out feverishly in sexual attire, and the camera places itself subjectively to make it look like they're doing it. There's almost no violence or sex in the show, but the RoboCop TV series is far more The Sandlot than it is the Buttercream Gang. The pilot, directed by seasoned TV vet Paul Lynch, with various directors following him after, lets you know exactly what you're in for. The script was adapted from an unused RoboCop 2 script by RoboCop writers Edward Neumeier and Michael Miner, originally titled RoboCop 2: The Corporate Wars. It was a very rough, quickly thrown together script halted by a writer's strike and therefore never touched up. In the screenplay, RoboCop kills a handful of bad guys amidst a large display of neon Christmas decorations. Afterwards, one of them, named Weasel, manages to fire a cannon at RoboCop, blowing him to smithereens. This takes him offline for 25 years, when he's awoken to a future with android prostitutes. Obviously, they don't use that here, but they do use trickery to blow Robo up with a large weapon, taking him offline and out of the pilot for a bummer chunk of its running time. The series takes place a few years after the original, and for the most part ignores RoboCop 2 and 3. The show only had the rights to Alex Murphy, so they basically just renamed everyone else. Robo still has his female partner, this time played by Yvette Nipar as Officer Lisa Madigan, as well as his police sergeant, now called Stanley Parks, and played by Blue Mancuma. It's the kind of legal sidestepping that the Friday the 13th franchise probably could have used during their rights issues. The same maneuvering takes place with everyone from the now less evil and more naive CEO of Omnicorp to Murphy's wife and son. The music and iconic theme song are even mostly the same, with slight variations here and there. The villains are where the series truly jumps the proverbial shark, many of which show up in the pilot and end up as recurring characters. Starting with Pudface Morgan, played by James Kidney, a disfigured bad guy who blames RoboCop for a horrific disfigurement that left him looking like one Minecraft commoner after a barbecue accident, based on the disfigured character of Emil from the original film. He's pretty hokey and seems more like a character out of Erie, Indiana or Goosebumps than the Robo universe. Then there's the mad genius villain Dr. Millardo, played excitedly by Cliff DeYoung. The paranoid psychopath with a 210 IQ has his moments where he's entertaining in a Jim Carrey Riddler sort of way, but it's often so annoying. There are more villains throughout, but they all come across as sort of a Rita Repulsa type. They'll hatch a new plan to take over Delta City or Old Detroit, and RoboCop will show up and bonk them on the head. Everyone learns a lesson. Speaking of Power Rangers comparisons, the show even has its own Zordon. Andrea Roth plays Diana Powers, an OCP secretary who is murdered in the pilot episode by Dr. Millardo so that he can use her brain for an AI meant to run Delta City. He succeeds in part. She's now a woman in the machine, but Robo saves her digital imprint and she ends up as a recurring hologram friend, helping him out with any cyber issues, much like the relationship between Halo's Master Chief and Cortana. It's kind of silly and awful, but again, can be endearing in the right spots. The studio continued to reach out to a younger demographic by, again, recruiting kid actors into major roles. First, there's 8 or 9-year-old character of Gadget, played by Sarah Campbell. She's a ward of the state who hangs around the police station as a mascot of sorts, before she's eventually adopted by the less screamy and more kind-hearted Sergeant Parks. Then there's RoboCop's own son, Jimmy, played by Jordan Hughes. And of course RoboCop's wife Nancy, played by Jennifer Griffin. His wife and son again think Alex Murphy was killed in action and don't know that he's RoboCop. He chooses to protect them from afar without letting them know the dark truth. The writing gives him plenty of opportunities, whether Jimmy's being recruited into an old gang or finding out that his wife and son are living off welfare. The studio had hoped that they could arrange an agreement with original RoboCop actor Peter Weller, but for unknown reasons, likely money, a deal could not be reached. They then asked RoboCop 3's Robert Burke, who actually declined as well. The studio held auditions and came across daytime Emmy-winning actor Richard Eden. Eden actually did an admirable job with the voice of RoboCop, and though sometimes a bit clunky, even the movements. But if we're being honest, his face was a fucking nightmare under the helmet. Handsome guy and all, but the makeup effects were haunting. Eden was given Weller's RoboCop 2 suit to film in, with a few minor alterations to make it fit. That suit ended up at almost 100 pounds to wear after the alterations. But on the bright side, the new gun was lighter and easier to maneuver, so there was that at least. And RoboCop was given a badass Ford Mustang to drive around the Canadian streets of Detroit to replace the classic Ford Taurus model. Throughout the episodes, you'll see Robo deal with some pretty interesting situations. The second episode features a group of nutbag religious televangelists trying to take him out, leading to him being framed for their hot tub murder. Another episode has him teaming with his retired police captain father to stop a nuclear war. There's even some nice Verhoevenisms with a few episodes that poke fun at how insane consumerism had become, such as an episode where RoboCop has to prove a man innocent before he executes himself on a live TV game show. But perhaps no moment is more memorable than in episode 14, RoboCop vs. Commander Cash. Rowdy Roddy Piper, of all people, plays a psychopath who believes he is the superhero Commander Cash. He takes on the persona and the ridiculous suit, as well as his sayings about cartoon law, using them to incite children to riot and steal toys from toy stores. He ends up teaming with RoboCop in a most entertaining episode that also speaks to the way consumerism was used as a weapon against kids in the material 90s. If that doesn't scream RoboCop, I don't know what the fuck does. The series had its own unique intro that felt something like one of the 90s Star Trek episodes, leading into a Law & Order-like title introduction when the lesson was learned and the bad guy was taken into custody. The ending of later episodes featured a power ballad by Joe Walsh and Lita Ford titled A Future to This Life. This, along with snippets from the awful music video that featured RoboCop staring at them confused. An action figure set was of course released by a company called Toy Island. The set had everything from a field ambulance to a cryo chamber playset, and featured G.I. Joe-sized miniature characters from the show. Later, they released a Power Glove series that featured some pretty sweet packaging. All of this may be a danger to your wallet should you dare to venture to eBay to check it out yourself.
Before we continue with our video, here's a reminder to click the Store tab on any of our Joe Blow channels and browse our collection of the latest and freshest designs in our merch store. Go get you some.
The show very clearly was quite ambitious and had good intentions, but they also never had much of a sense of who in the hell they were marketing to. The highlights of the show was everything wrought from the original two films. From the awesome cyberpunk aesthetic to the music and the cheeky corporate media satire, the lowlights came when they attempted to turn the show into Full House or Family Matters. The ratings and reviews were terrible, and the show only lasted the one season, despite the production hoping to continue for another. Though the show has had a myriad of hard-to-find and confusing physical media releases, including a release of the pilot episode as RoboCop 4 Law & Order, the good news is that you can find the entire run in pretty decent quality on both Amazon Prime and Tubi currently. And sure, it's not up to snuff for what the franchise could have been, but when it comes to a wholesome, sometimes badass nostalgia, you could do worse if sick in bed on a long flight or cleaning the house. It's something worth checking out for Super RoboCop fans.
Until we meet again.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. We're an independent company and we appreciate all of your support.